Welcome to the Work Intelligence Loop. I'm your host, Todd Michaud. At the Work Intelligence Loop, we explore how artificial intelligence, automation, and technology in general is reshaping organizations, particularly in the financial services space, identifying how work gets done, and ultimately helping these organizations with the shift to future readiness. Today's conversation is about the future of community banking technology, partnerships, innovation, and the work ahead. I've got an amazing guest today, Steve DuPerrieu, who's the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at CSI. Steve brings 24 years of financial technology experience, not just at CSI. He does some really interesting volunteerism work. I'll let him speak a little bit about some of the work he's done with the National FinTech Organization and the Association for Financial Technology. Steve, welcome. Thanks so much for being on my show today. I'd love to have you just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, your background, and some of the work that you enjoy doing.
Well, thanks for having me, Todd. Always great to talk to you, and look forward to this next few minutes chatting about something that I've spent working on 3 decades. And so it's something I'm obviously passionate about. So like you said, 24, I think it's 25 or maybe even 20, working on 26 years in this area, in this industry. I have spent most of that with CSI. I actually had 5 years where I left CSI back in 2005 through 2010. And was a really good experience for me to leave and then come back and bring back what I learned in that 5 years. I've really I've had one of my bosses call me a Swiss Army knife. I've been able to start in technology directly with as a developer, web developer to be specific, in kind of the internet boom era, 2000, 2001, 2002. I quickly learned that I didn't want to spend, my 45 years or so working life in a cubicle at a computer monitor writing code. It was valuable experience, right? To understand how the sausage is made. So after about 3.5, 4 years, an opportunity on the product team opened up with who became one of probably my most valued mentors, Bobby Zell, who works at CSI, still works at CSI, has been there his whole career, to move to his team and work on his team and on the product team and work with partners in internet banking. So I did that. And then, like I said, left for 5 years and worked for a much smaller financial services company that did core banking and internet banking and all those things for just a smaller segment of the market in Tennessee, and ran sales and kind of relationship management for that company for about 5 years, and worked for the CEO directly, who was a lifetime banker turned president of a data center, if you will. And she kind of took under her wing and taught me banking. She was a bank CFO. She started at the teller and went all the way through. So that's really where I cut my teeth in how a bank works,
Sure.
how they make money, how they operate, all of those types of things. So it was a great experience. And then had an opportunity to come back and work for Bob, who I mentioned earlier, in 2010 on the product team, and manage various teams and worked with Bob directly and did product for the next 8 or 9 years into a fairly rapid change cycle, starting in 2018, 2019. And I've always had the approach and had the benefit of working for Greg, and the leadership at the time kind of tasked me with various tasks along the way, even happening today for the last 8 years, which allowed me to dip my toe in different edges of the business that I hadn't been directly exposed to. And so it's been great for learning and really understanding how the whole company, whole industry operates from different lenses.
Well, and I want to ask you about some of your volunteer stuff also, but before we go there, obviously you've been with the same company for a long time, so you're very passionate about the company. Just say a few words about CSI and why you love the company, the mission.
Sure. There's a lot of reasons I love CSI. The first being, the company was founded by somebody that I was lucky enough my first few years of my career to work very closely with, a gentleman named John Williams, who was the chairman and founder um, of CSI, and um, it was based in Paducah, Kentucky, which is my hometown. So CSI is a very as a native Paducah, I live in Franklin, Tennessee now, but as a native Paducah, CSI is a very it's a great company to be proud of for everybody that lives in that area. Paducah is a very small town, and to be the type of company we are in that small of a town, it's very a very critical part of that community. So that makes me proud to work there. Just I had aunts and uncles and friends and all that were shareholders when we were public. So when I was in town and I was in for holidays and all that, people would ask me, how we doing? How's the stock doing? Those types of things. So that's part of it. The other thing too is I think CSI. I mentioned John also. His the person that took his role as CEO, Steve Pallas, Dave Culbertson, who is the next CEO, Stan Eckenberg, who was COO for a long time while I was there. We've been, and now Nancy, who's all amazing people, amazing leaders, different in their own ways, but all great. And I think that has that's kind of waterfall down through the organization and the culture, their personalities, their varying personalities. And I go back to we used to have these quarterly meetings called, I think they were on target meetings company wide. And at that time it was 300 employees. Now it's, close to 2,000. But I remember kind of my first one, and Steve Pallas got up and talked. And he was talking about the culture of the company and what was important and how we do the right thing for our customers, even though it might not be the right short-term business decision, that doing the right thing pays off and it's profitable and it's the right thing to do. And you can feel good about that. And that really resonated with me and stuck with me and said, you know what, I want to be a part of this because these people really mean what they say and do what they mean. And so it was that connection. And I also think that really works well with the community banks, because the community bank culture, generally speaking, is the same.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's why CSI and our customers have such a great relationship. All of our customers are, I say all, most of our customers, we mess up sometimes, but if you do the right thing, you own that and admit it and address it and are transparent about that. All of those values, I guess, is what is something that really makes me passionate about CSI. And then, the next thing, which is also related, I think, just generally speaking, community banks are so important to the economic fabric of the country. And so it gives purpose for what you do every day, meaning, helping them be successful by providing solutions and products and technologies that help them be competitive and help them grow their business and help them take care of their customers so that their communities can thrive. You feel like you're doing something that's really moving the country forward. So there's purpose there. I could go on, but that's three primary reasons.
That's great. Well, by the way, you got in the obligatory compliment to Nancy and all of her predecessors. You did.
I didn't mean to.
Yeah, so that was good. That was good. That was good. Just in case this
wipe
is
my nose off a little bit there.
Yeah. Well, so you had an interesting journey. You started as a coder, you went into product management, and then ultimately you landed in partnerships. How did you end up forming CSI's numerous terrific partnerships?
Yeah, I've learned a lot just in the 2 or 3 years I've been doing partnerships directly. However, partnerships product is very tightly, shoulder to shoulder. And we did a lot of partnerships when we didn't have a partnership team on the product team. So experience with partnerships, but through the lens of a product person rather than directly responsible for partnership. I think when you step back and think about it, partnerships are hard. They're very hard. I did a presentation at AFT. You mentioned AFT, I think last year, maybe 18 months ago, and found a Gartner stat that said, only 20% or so of partnerships succeed. And that's worse than the weatherman, so I try to be better than that 20%, but the reason it's hard is because you've got companies of varying sizes, cultures, ways of doing business, operating motion, et cetera, and you kind of got to synchronize all that to be successful, which means you have to have somebody that has, in order to be successful, you have to have somebody that understands how operations work, how development and engineering works, how product management works, how customer support works, how sales works, because you need all of those different functions to work fairly in tandem to be successful. When they get out of whack is where partnerships kind of fall apart. And then, and you also have a short window to be successful, right? Because you put a lot of effort and time and cycles into a partnership. And at some point, the people that I work for, C-level, ELT type folks, say, look, this isn't working. We got to move on and do something different. So there's an urgency and a complexity that makes it difficult to do. And I think given my kind of domain knowledge of CSI, just specific to CSI, as well as working in all the different functions, allows me maybe to help address issues, see issues, anticipate issues with the partnership, and put them back on the tracks. Maybe a little bit quicker than somebody that hadn't done some of the things I've done. So
it's, it is interesting. You talked about the culture of the company, and really great companies realize that they can't be all things to all people. Humility, right? Humility's such a valuable thing in a large, technology company to understand. These guys can do something better. Let us focus on, our knitting, if you will. And I do think that CSI has got a real balanced win-win mindset, around the partnerships that it forms. And so I think you guys do it super well. And
well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope the people that I complimented earlier hear that as well.
You mean like Nancy? What are you talking about? Okay. Yeah. I like it. Well, you were kind of talking about the product alignment and how you got into partnerships, but you have another interesting angle to your background, and that is, call it volunteerism, but basically the support of the fintech world, the technology community that serves, bankers as well. And, I saw that you had a couple of experiences in your background that took you down there. So talk a little bit about AFT and NFO, just a little bit about what you did or have done with those organizations and what drew you to that. And should probably connect the dots. Not everybody knows what those organizations are all about.
So I'll start with AFT because NFO is actually a sister organization of NFO and operates kind of under the AFT umbrella. But so AFT started a long time ago, and the person I mentioned earlier, John Williams, who founded CSI, also helped found AFT, which was actually known before it was rebranded as AFT. It was known as the NABS is what it was called, National Association of Bank Servicers, which was, I don't know, they didn't have a marketing person in the room when they named that. So sorry, John, if you didn't like that. But they rebranded it AFT, and what it started as all the core providers. So back in the 70s and 80s, there were a lot of core providers, not the big, like the big four that we have now. I say big four because it's, Fiserv, FIS, Jack Henry, and ourselves on the banking side. Back then there was 50 or 60 of them, and they all really needed to collaborate to solve problems across the ecosystem. The problems they were solving then were like Micker on the checks and ATMs coming to market and those types of things. So that's really where AFT started. CSI has been a heavy participant in that organization since its founding. And I was lucky enough back in 2010 when I came back to CSI that Bob and David Culbertson, who Bob was my boss and a past president of AFT, and David was the existing president of AFT at the time, wanted to get me involved in it. So got the lucky enough to get the corporate ticket to be one of the chosen to go to AFT. And what I found was an awesome environment of really great people and titans of our industry. Like there was Dave Foss, who at the time was CEO of Jack Henry. There were, leaders from FIS there. There were CEOs of startups and a lot of partnership people and sales people and all that stuff there. Competitors, as well as partners. And basically the qualifier is if you sell software to community banks, you're invited to be a member. And so really it was a great environment, stayed engaged, got involved. And then in 2014 was actually got the opportunity to run for the board. And it is an election and you have to stump for yourself. And you talk about intimidation is getting up in front of a room of 150 to 200 of your industry peers and tell them why they should vote for you to be on the board. So got up and was lucky enough to get elected, spent a normal term on the board is 5 years, but I got to spend 6 years because of COVID, and was president in 2019 of AFT. And really, it's kind of goes back to my answer about community banks and being part of the ecosystem and their communities and all that. Is AFT is how we as a industry come together and solve problems together. There are no bankers there because we don't want to be competitive. If one banker came in the room, somebody's going to be protective of that customer because they know their competitors in the room too. So we kind of drop the swords, get there and just talk about, whatever it is, the hot topics of the day and how we need to solve that. What are the issues, et cetera, et cetera. I actually, to give you an example, a shout out to my good buddy, Wade Arnold, who's CEO of Move. You may have heard of, or know Wade. Wade was very active when I was getting involved, kind of ahead of me, advocating for really open banking, open APIs, breeding innovation, allowing companies to get access to these banks' data so that they could build new products and services and technologies that would help, move the ecosystem forward. That Wade was really the flag bearer for that. And he met a lot of resistance and he did not give up. And if you know Wade, he doesn't give up. And he really pushed that forward. And if you look at where we are now, Fiserv offering APIs, FIS has their marketplace. We have our marketplace. Jack Henry has theirs. A lot of the movement in that direction was as a direct result of the collaboration at AFT that happened. Now, it wasn't all like there's regulation that drove some of that, with over in Europe and those types of things. But really there was those conversations happened and those debates happened and those arguments happened inside the walls of AFT. So that's just an example of an industry problem that we had that helped move the industry forward by solving it together.
A really good story. So, you've got the perspective of being a solution provider. You've got the perspective of partnering. with solution providers who may be complementary to your core business. And then, of course, got the perspective of this association of people that come together to solve the problems that bankers have, and to talk, without, I guess, fear of, competitive nastiness or whatever. Now that gives you, I think, pretty interesting lens, and let's kind of shift into a couple of areas of general topic. And so, you talked about your years of service in this industry, and you probably few have the same perspective as you do about the evolution of banking technology and what's fundamentally changing. Let's kind of talk about where we've been and where we're going from your perspective, with that evolution of banking technology.
Yeah. Yeah. I I think I think we're at a inflection point right now, to be honest with you, that in my mind has the potential to be even more impactful than what the kind of the late 90s and early 2000s did with the internet, with AI, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I've seen a few cycles in my career, 26 years. And I think that direct consumer banking, meaning the internet, mobile and digital banking, it has had a huge impact on how banks operate today. It was a few years ago, probably 2015, 2016. That time we were talking about how the digital banking was an ancillary channel. Now it's the primary channel. It flipped then, pre-COVID. COVID like cemented the deal that is the primary banking channel and everything has to operate through that channel. That all started back in the late 90s and 2000s. So we're at the end of that cycle, I think. We're at the beginning of the data and AI cycle. And I think it's really exciting. We've been hearing about AI for a long time. Me look, in the seat that I sit in, hearing about it, reading about it, hearing speakers about it at conferences, all those things. But really for me, it became real in the last 9 to 12 months, maybe, where I'm actually seeing business impact from some of the stuff that's happening, and it's happening extremely fast. Like, this may be a very simple example, but I was really excited when I got my hands on just the basic Copilot through Teams 6 or 9 months ago, maybe 12 months ago. I don't remember exactly when I got it. Now, we've deployed Claude internally at CSI, and actually an email went out to all employees today to let them know that they were getting, some level of access to the Claude client to help them work more efficiently and do all those things. But the difference, the impact for me personally, is like I have a team of 20 people working for me now. And now I am guilty of burning tokens. I am burning a ton of tokens these days. But hats off to CSI and hats off to Daniel Hazley, who you've met, Todd, and for driving those initiatives forward and getting those tools in the hands of us, because I think we're just scratching the surface right now of the impact that those things are going to have. So that's kind of where, just in my career, where we've come from. I think the other one I wanted to mention was, and it goes along the lines of the internet, but bandwidth. I think bandwidth has had a huge, in my career, impact on banking. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to tie some of my sales, cutting my teeth in sales and bandwidth together. One of the things the first sales initiative I got involved in as kind of a salesperson was going out and converting all of the community banks that I owned, as far as a relationship management perspective goes. on branch catcher. Without bandwidth, we couldn't move all these check images across, lines rather than couriering all the checks down the highway every afternoon to the Fed and all those things. And that technology in a 12 to 18 month period changed banking dramatically. And the way banking had worked for ever since checks were invented up until that point, changed it in a year's time by putting these little shoebox size scanners in the branches, teaching tellers how to scan those batches and upload those checks, and taking the couriers out of the mix, and driving those efficiencies on the check operation. So to me, that was a big deal, and a good experience for me of learning how to say, look, you're paying X amount of dollars and cents and all of this for us to process your checks this way. I'm going to save you so much money and show them the ROI, and make it an easy sale, an easy decision. So anyways, getting back to the future, AI, I'm convinced is going to have major effects on business in general, banking specifically, and we're just starting to see some use cases right now that really matter. But again, I think we're just scratching the surface. I'll just give you one simple use case, and maybe some bankers who do compliance or legal type things could use it. These language learning models can accelerate a partnership agreement, the reading of a partnership agreement, comparing where I might have to have 12 months ago block off 3 or 4 hours on my schedule to go line by line through an agreement and make sure I understand it, what does this particular legalese mean, all of those things. Very onerous work. It streamlines that so much and does that. Now, it's not perfect. So you gotta QA it and make sure you're watching out for things and all that. But I can imagine, with the regulatory environment and compliance environment and all of the various documentation that the bankers have with their customers, with lending customer, complex commercial loans and all of those things, that being able to get through some of those tasks faster and probably with much higher quality, to be honest with you, is a really good use case.
It's interesting. You kind of talk about this trajectory that banks have been on. And we first met, I think at the ICBA, conference here a few years ago, whatever it was. And I remember going through their program. They weren't quite sure that they wanted us to explain that we were an AI company, right? Because bankers, they're not there yet. And we thought, okay, that's interesting. And then, of course, fast forward to where we are today, and there's a mad dash to AI adoption, and the examples that you used for your own business, Copilot and Claude, excellent examples. And now we can see bankers at least doing Copilot and maybe increasingly doing a little bit of experimentation with Claude or ChatGPT or whatever it happens to be. It's not too far in the future where, the fear subsides, adoption has taken place, and then AI almost permeates everything that they do. And since you get to see so many technology companies from, your perch, there's going to be a day where a technology company like mine or yours, it'll be impossible for those companies to exist and not be an AI-driven company. And
I will tell you, Todd, I think CSI is probably at the point right now where if you took all of our AI tools away today, we would operate much less efficiently than we would with those tools. We're already there.
Yes.
So dependent, right? I did want to mention, by the way, you asked me use cases. It just dawned on me that might have been a little bit of a softball or tee up question for me to knock Hulu out of the park.
Oh,
So
gosh.
a little plug,
No.
little shameless plug for Hulu. Seriously though, some of the automation and the ease of use, the great user interface that your application has and all that, I think is great. And we're seeing adoption with CSI, mutual CSI and Hulu customers. So just shameless plug for that.
Thank you for that. That's very nice of you. I wasn't fishing for that, but I'm glad you said it. And actually, we're really pleased to have a partnership with CSI. It's been terrific, and we're solving problems together. And we feel like you have our back, and hopefully, the opposite is true.
What's funny is we're solving problems together, and we're identifying a lot more things we can do together.
Yeah.
Right.
That is really, really true, isn't it? And, as we're out there talking to these bankers and we're talking about kind of this education and now acceptance. And again, there's still those that are a little bit, timid, about, making the move.
Taking
AI.
taking that back to what I mentioned earlier about digital banking.
Yeah.
It is hard to imagine this, but we had customers in 2012, 2013, 2014 that were still like, not sure if I want to do internet and digital and mobile banking. Like I'm a little bit afraid to open that up and blah, blah. And I mean, so the innovation curve, the early adopter, the mass market, the laggers, it's all going to happen with AI too. It's a very predictable cycle, but I will tell you the impact that it has, and as dramatic as I believe it's going to be, if you're on the backside of that curve, the risk is enormous.
Yep. I totally agree. You were talking about that technology adoption life cycle, right? And each big wave that we were talking about, the internet, mobile, et cetera, you had the early adopters, the early followers, the late followers, and the laggards. And eventually, everybody gets on board. You have no choice. The problem is that if you're late to the game, or God forbid, a laggard, most of the financial benefits have evaporated. You're there just from a Me Too perspective. You talked about digital banking. That's a classic example. At some point, it was no longer a competitive advantage. And so, because CSI and my company serve these community banks, it is interesting that there's sort of a dichotomy. So if you think about who the adversaries of our customers are, the large national, regional banks that have got the capital, they've got the resources, they have the appetite to adopt AI tools, with vigor, but because of their size, they're lethargic, and it still takes them a long time to get from idea to deployment. And the typical CSI bank or Hulu client, for that matter, has the ability to be decisive and use their size and agility as competitive advantage. And so now you got to worry about those that have those advantages but don't flex those muscles, and there's always going to be those that choose not to do it. But there's clearly an increasing necessity for these community bankers that you serve, that we serve, to really embrace this technology, and it becomes the center of everything. And it's interesting. I saw, because CSI has its core business as a core. It's one of the most future proof technologies. That you can think about, all the technology stack, right? And you're not changing your core every 2 years, and you want to get the most out of your core. You sweat the asset, or whatever the best way to describe that is. And so that's a great benefit for your solution in this rapidly changing landscape. It's always going to be a part of the mix. That said, your ability to bring solutions either internally developed by your team or by partners or what have you to bear to sort of turbocharge this powerful infrastructure becomes incredibly important for your clients. And I know you guys do that super well. And I guess whether you're building it in-house or partnering, collaborating, or even some of these companies are doing their own internal experimentation, investing in Claude and those other tools. Everybody's on that journey one way or another, aren't they?
They are. And let me go back to you were mentioning the competitors. I think community banks that embrace AI, and when I say embrace AI, like funny enough, I'm gonna quote my dad. A famous cliche my dad always says is, the hardest part is just getting started. Right? The hardest part is just getting started. It's not about eating the elephant. It's about taking one little bite and getting started. And then that resonating, that really helps me. Let me show you, the person I'm working next to, let me show you what I did, and they do it. And then it kind of permeates through the organization to me. And then everybody kind of makes it their own, and it's making their job better and more efficient and easier. And so now I do think there's some governance and organization that needs to be around that and all that, but it is, to me, a major equalizer that makes community bank able to punch way above their weight against those competitors that you mentioned earlier. So I'm extremely optimistic about that and the impact it can have for community bank. And the other thing, the example that comes to mind too, is it's a proud moment more than anything, but it's also an example of where community bank shine was the funding of PPP back during COVID, and the community bank's ability to help the businesses in their community stay open and get that money to them quickly. That's an example of that agility you're talking about. Yes. And that's really why everybody that works at CSI gets up and goes to work every day, is so that we can help equalize the play, or level the playing field for our community banks so that they can compete. And we can talk a little bit, if you want to, about some of our strategic priorities too. I think the next real major strategy for CSI that we want to help, and our customers are confirming this directions in the conversations that we're having with them, is giving them better abilities to compete at the commercial banking level. I think for the most part, community banks do well on the lending side of the house. It becomes about efficient operations and scalability on lending, like how quickly can I move some of these complex loans through the pipe and get them on? And it becomes about, I've got enough demand. It's just about, it's a governor that I got to have on the demand, because I got to monitor my my capital ratios and all those types of things. So then it shifts to the deposit side, and really in the commercial deposit side, giving the community bankers, the tools that allow them to compete with the regionals and the nationals. Again, punch above their weight is the term I keep going back to, so that they can retain and bring in those very low cost deposits on the business side that allow them to then, on the lending side, generate more, which is where they make the money, right? So low cost deposits in commercial banking, the treasury tools, the ability to service businesses that are bigger than they've serviced in the past that have those advanced treasury needs and all those types of things. That's what we're really focused on. We announced an acquisition last week of a company called Quolo, which I'm super excited about. I've been a part of 8 or 9 acquisitions since I've been at CSI, and all of them have been great, and that brought great people into the company. But this one in particular, I think, is transformational as any. And it's going to allow us to do a lot of really cool things, particularly around the commercial banking side. I'm super excited about it, and super excited what that brings for the community banks and the businesses in those communities that probably don't want to leave their community bank, but are forced to because they're limited on their tool set. As those businesses grow, if we can allow the community banks to keep those businesses longer, and stay as great customers, the banks grow faster and CSI grow faster, which is what we're all kind of collectively trying to do. So,
by the way, congratulations, obviously on that acquisition. That's a big deal for you guys, and I know it solves some critical pain points that you have on over the long term for the benefit of your customers, and so I know that their needs were significantly considered as a part of that evaluation process that
absolutely.
you made in the acquisition, and you're playing to help them win with that move. So congratulations, and
100%.
that you're going to be involved with that. So hopefully you enjoy that experience of bringing them to the family. Welcome.
Well, I'll tell you, the leadership at Quolo, who I've got to know over the past few months, Patricia and Darren and Rusbe, a lot of the folks that work in fintech know that they're great people too. Great ads, just culturally. Quolo, the QOLO stands for quality of life, and they really live that out. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Well, I'm excited for you too. I know, hearing after the fact, how much effort the company put in to getting that right, and I know there's a lot of work in front of you. But you guys have become real pros at being able to integrate, great acquisitions and make them part of the family, for the benefit of your clients, et cetera. So I know that'll be the case here as well. So watching the time, I'd like to maybe go a couple of places here. So we're going to do maybe 2 things. I want you to look ahead over the next 5 years, talk a little bit about what you see, and then we're going to wrap up with some lightning round, fun questions, quick answers. Sound enough?
Yeah, it sounds
okay?
Good. So next 3 to 5 years, right. I think, we've kind of talked about AI at length. I think that's the, front page headline, probably for the next 3 to 5 years. I think that, I've never actually been a banker, but I've been around it so long that I think I have a pretty good sense of things, and it feels to me like just that the economic uncertainty is at a high point right now. So I think it's kind of unpredictable at this point to say, interest rates and all those types of things could go one way or the other, and so I guess 3 to 5 years from a pure like banking and economic perspective, I don't want to pretend to be like an expert. It just seems cloudy to me that it's difficult to predict what, the environment's going to look like 12, 18, 24 months from.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm excited about with our partnership that, isn't the main theme, but when we talk about AI adoption and the pace, quickening, but also the critical role that CSI's various solutions play for these banks. So those that are becoming future ready, they're doing 2 things, I think, all around CSI's portfolio. One is they're reshaping work, So the way that we did processes, the way that we managed our business over the last decade, that's not sufficient enough going forward. So how do we reshape work without
what got us here won't get us there?
That's right.
Basically.
And by the way, the chassis is still going to be CSI, isn't it? So CSI's product will evolve, but it'll remain, sort of the foundation for a lot of how these organizations reshape work. So that's macro trend number one that your company's solving, mine is, and so many other really brilliant companies are focused on this. The second thing that I get kind of excited about is when we think about who your users will be. And so what I'm convinced of is that when we think about this next 3 to 5 years, no matter the economic conditions, et cetera, we know the workforce is going to be different. And so for the past 10 years, we've been worried about our human workers, and we still are. That's the community bank. Community bank's about human workers and what you can do to better serve their clients. But now the workforce changes a little bit. Workforce becomes about robotic workers and agentic workers working alongside human workers. And some of those workers, those robotic workers and agentic workers, may still be using, the CSI application, instead of human fingertips,
Sure.
essentially processing transactions. It'll be digital workers, and so this really interesting landscape of how we think about talent, and you know, um, this human ethos that community banks have, where we need to supercharge these people so we can grow assets, we can maybe weather some of the consolidation that's going to occur, and I get the most out of our people, which is the most essential ingredient, with their digital colleagues, who will increasingly play their part in the community bank of the future. Is that how you
I
see
agree.
it too?
I think I might add on to that the bankers look at their efficiency ratios, and
That's right.
I think what you're saying speaks to a focus in on that, because that's something we can control now. And the economy is an uncontrollable. So let's focus in on what we can control right now. Be ready for when changes from north to south or east to west. And then the other thing too is, and I think it's also AI related, is there's a ton of institutional knowledge in these community banks. There's people that have worked there for a long time. Guilty as charged too, institutional knowledge, being at CSI as long as I have. I think there's a way to capture some of that institutional knowledge and implement it in an agentic way, right? So building out that knowledge, implementing it into your, agent and your models and all of those things. And not that we're trying to replace somebody, but we want to capture what they know so that we can move forward.
Well, it's about it's about liberating them to do what they do best.
Absolutely.
Community banks are always going to be people businesses. We can't lose sight of that. It's the very differentiator. From
when a customer needs something that's a little bit obscure and only happens every so often. The community bank of the past has been like, we've got that one person that knows how to handle that. Let me see if I can find that person. But they're on vacation, so you're going to have to wait till next week for that to happen. Those types of things. We can get those processes addressed with some of these tools. So
I totally agree. Okay, so let's do some lightning round. We have a couple of minutes here. So questions, quick answers, just kind of fun. Okay, so give me one banking innovation trend that is overhyped, maybe besides AI, because AI would be too much of a layup for you.
So first off, if my buddy Pete Lyman listens to this, I hope he doesn't hold this against me, but I think stablecoin's a bit overrated.
Okay, all right, okay, that's a good one. That's a good one, right? That's another big unknown.
Deposits, not. So there is a difference.
Okay, so that's a good one. I like that one. Okay, now what is a big innovation trend in banking that is underappreciated at this point?
This is not. A baited answer, but I think workflow automation, to be honest with you, is underrated. Yeah,
Good answer. I
yeah.
like that. Brownie points
I
for the
wasn't going
answer.
for
I like
brownie
that.
points. I really think, I think people are scared by that, and
Yeah.
without the right tools, it's gotten a little bit of a black eye, maybe reputation wise, and now there's easier implemented solutions that I think could have an impact. So
Yeah. Very much so. Like I said, great answer. Great answer. It's brilliant. You're brilliant. The one leadership trait within your uh, community bank clients that's essential in this AI future era.
don't lose the human connection.
Totally. That's a good one. That's a good one. Courage is another one I
Love
throw out there.
courage.
Sometimes, you got to be courageous. Yeah, you got to have the courage to you make those decisive moves. Otherwise, you see the advantage
Yeah.
to your point earlier. And then community banks, greatest long-term advantage, maybe based upon all of this tech that we've
I'm
talked
go
about.
back and talk about the human connection, the ability to have that direct connection to the community is always going to be an advantage. And honestly, it's what makes this country different from the rest of the world.
Totally so. Yeah, I totally agree. Most countries have got large, enterprise banking and not that community-centric mindset. It's about
And it
Main
makes,
Street.
the downside of that is it makes jobs on the technology companies like yours and like CSI much more difficult because we can't get kind of easy interoperability across the ecosystem, but that, we'll solve that problem. So,
Well, I tell you, Steve, you've done an amazing job today. You've been a lot of fun talking to. I love the way you think about things and your background in community banking, working with innovation companies, partners. All it's fantastic, and I've really very much appreciated having you on my show.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Good luck with that big acquisition. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Todd.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye.